Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, February the 15th, and welcome to our video commentary. Well, I'm fighting a little bit of the allergies up here in North Texas, and my voice is not the best, but please forgive me as I try to, complete the video today. I'll make it, but it's not as good as it always is, but I'll be okay. I'll be okay, as they say. February the 15th, you know how much I like history. And when the history has to do with Cuba, well, I find it even more interesting. But on this day, February the 15th, 1998, February the 15th, 1998, the USS Maine exploded in Havana. The USS Maine was in Havana Harbor. It exploded, and it was a big scandal. And a couple of weeks later, President McKinley went on national, oh, well, not on national TV. He went to the Congress. They didn't have national TV back then, but he went to the Congress and he asked the Congress for a declaration of war over the incident. And that, of course, was the Spanish-American War. And that was relevant to me because it was the Spanish-American War that eventually brought about Cuban independence from Spain. And Cuba was actually a protectorate of the United States for about 4 years. And then in 1902, Cuba became an independent country. So it all began on this day in 1898 when the Maine exploded. And that became a big scandal. That became something big for American newspapers and American readers, newspaper readers. And that was a huge story. That was a huge story back then. The beginning of what came to be known as the Spanish-American War. It only lasted 4 months. It was a very quick war, and Spain had very little to put up at that point. So the United States defeated Spain as a result of that war, and that meant that Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines became part of the United States. Now, the Puerto Rico is still a part of the United States, I guess indirectly. Cuba became an independent country, and eventually the Philippines also became an independent country. But it all started on this day in 1998 when the Maine exploded in Havana Harbor. It was quite a story, and quite a moment in Cuban history and, of course, U.S. history as well. Well, today we're going to talk about President Biden. I have a post over at the American Thinker where I call it the Biden Blues. The country is singing the Biden blues, and especially the Democrats are singing the Biden blues because nothing, absolutely nothing, is working for President Biden. If you look at the approval rates, whether it's the economy, inflation, the border, I mean, across the board, he's under 50%. And in many of those, he's actually under 40%. For example, on the border, on inflation, he is being very hard hit. Public opinion is coming back very tough on President Biden for some of the results that we have seen here over the last year. And this is, of course, having an impact on Democrats, because Democrats are going to have to, they're going to have to run for office in 2022 associated to some degree with President Biden. And that's becoming very, very difficult. We see it right here in Texas with Beto O'Rourke, who's running for governor, and he has already said that he's not inviting President Biden to campaign for him. So the Biden blues, that's what we call it. The Biden blues have become a real problem for the Democrats. There's a stat that I cite in my article over at the American Thinker. The article, you can read the article, by the way, on my Facebook page or on my blog or, of course, American Thinker. And one of the most interesting statistics that I have is that something like 40%, 60% of Democrats do not want Biden as their nominee. I mean, it's pretty incredible if you think about that. When was the last time that you saw that happen, where the members of the party after 1 year did not want their own president or their own incumbent president to be the nominee? I mean, that is pretty rough. And the only other time that I recall that happening was in 1968 when President Johnson decided not to seek re-election. But I mean, that was after he had been president for 5 years, which is a totally different situation as the one we're living in right now. That was because, of course, the Vietnam War had divided the country so much, and President Johnson's popularity was way down, and he was being challenged from within, within his own party for the nomination. So what we are watching with President Biden, as I call it, the Biden blues, is a real problem for the Democrats, a very serious problem for the Democrats. And how they get out of this, I don't know, because I don't see any easy way out. Now, there is something going on today with Ukraine, where apparently the Russian troops are pulling back, or Putin is sending some signs that he wants to negotiate or whatever. That's good. I mean, that's good for Ukraine, and that's good for the world, because the last thing we want is Russian troops in Ukraine. And, I suppose President Biden will try to take some credit for that. And, he could get some credit for that, but I don't think it's going to change political landscape back here in the United States, because I just don't think most people really are interested in what's going on in Iran, in Ukraine. What is really driving a lot of the Biden blues, as I call it, is the inflation and the price of gasoline. That's what's killing President Biden right now politically. Now, another Democrat also in the news is AOC, Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez, who is a representative from New York. And she was in Texas over the weekend. She was campaigning for a couple of Democrat challengers to Representative Cuellar in South Texas and Representative Lloyd. I can't think of his name right now, but anyway, he's the Democrat who represents a part of Austin. Doggett, that's his name, Lloyd Doggett. And she was there doing, in a sense, on behalf of the two Democrats who are seeking to overthrow these two Democrats. The insanity of what Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez is doing, the insanity is that she is going after two Democrats who have safe seats. I mean, those two Democrats should win re-election in those districts, but so much attention and so much money is going to go to their opponents that there could be a problem. I mean, what happens to all of those people who don't support Cuellar? What are they going to do? Are they going to vote for him after the primary? Now, I was talking to my friend George Rodriguez down in South Texas, and he believes that both of those Democrats will survive the challenge. But the question is, what happens after the primary? What happens are those Democrats who voted, let's say, for the opponent of Representative Cuellar, of the opponent of Representative Doggett, are those Democrats going to turn around then and support the party? That's a big question mark. That's a big question mark. And in the case of Cuellar, he needs every vote he can get in that district, because he's got a very good Republican opponent. So AOC, in the name of helping these two Democrats, is actually hurting the party. A year in which the party is going to take some losses, and the last thing they need is to lose a couple of very safe seats in Texas, the one in Austin and the one down on the border over by the San Antonio side of the border. Well, let's talk about another big story that was in the news here recently, where the special prosecutor has presented documents connecting the Hillary Clinton campaign to spying in the Trump administration, or against the Trump administration or the Trump campaign. Now, this is not getting a lot of publicity in the media, which is a bit interesting, considering all the publicity they gave to everything Russia before that. I believe, though, that eventually they're going to have to cover this, because the special prosecutor is making a pretty good case. And this is not really about politics. This is about opinions. And the special prosecutor, based on the facts that he's presenting, is going to eventually have some indictments. And that's going to eventually have to get the attention, without question, is going to have to get the attention of the media and of the people covering these events. So this is going to get big. I'll make you a prediction. I'm not familiar with all the details in the indictments. I'm still learning about them. I mean, I know the big picture. President Trump has been talking about the fact that they were spying on his campaign, and that is true. They were spying on his campaign. But I think now it's beginning to look more and more like it really did happen. It's not just a political attack. It was, in fact, they were spying on his campaign. And I think this could really, really backfire. And you know what? I think it should. if the Hillary Clinton campaign was engaging in this kind of activity, they should be processed. They should be prosecuted, and the people involved. Now, I don't know whether Hillary Clinton herself is going to be prosecuted, because I'm sure there's some way that they can separate her from what was happening, and they'll figure out somebody in the campaign will take the blame. But the reality is that this is very serious stuff. And eventually the media is going to have to cover it. They're not doing it now. They're not doing it now for whatever reason. But eventually they're going to have to cover it, because this is pretty big stuff. Well, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to our commentary. Thank you for some of the comments that we've been getting. We appreciate those very much. I even got one in Spanish, which is kind of cool. So I'm getting people in Spanish and in English. That's kind of cool. I guess that must tell you something about me, right? That I have friends who speak both languages. But again, pardon my voice. I have been fighting a little bit of the allergy that goes around here this time of the year and everything else. I know that I feel okay. I mean, I feel fine. It's just that my voice has gotten a little bit impacted by all of this. But, you know, I took the medicine, and I took a couple of those little things for your throat. And I feel so much better now than I did 20 minutes ago when I tried to do the video. So something seems to be working. The medicine seems to be working, and that's a good thing. Thank you for your time. And if today is your birthday, happy birthday. Thank you very much.